you so much for joining us. I'd like to introduce Adam Pullett. He's the Deputy Director of the Illinois Office of Trade and Investment, and he's here to talk about a federal grant to support small and medium-sized businesses in their efforts to export. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. So yes, let me launch right in. The topic of today's webinar is the State Office of Trade and Investment and our export promotion programs, but specifically the new federally funded STEP program, which stands for State Trade and Export Promotion. And just to give you sort of the headline from all of this is that we have something on the order of 1.2 markets in order to make the right connections with agents, distributors, their consumers, in order to directly boost their export sales. So with that as the framework, let me tell you a little bit about what my office does. And I think to start, we should have an understanding of the goals and the objectives that this administration has. Very clearly, Governor Quinn's export goals stated on the record is that we ought to double our exports to $82 billion by the end of 2014. Now, that goal exists in parallel with the very same goal at the federal level issued by President Obama. And so we are saying that we want to do our part in terms of reaching that very ambitious target. Why is export important, and why is it something that the state spends time on? We want to support that. Some sort of relevant facts to help get our minds around that. Since 2002, Illinois exports have grown $24 billion. Exports totaled over $50 billion in 2010, and that's up 20% from 2009. And again, just to give you a framework for understanding, we need 15% compound annual growth from 2009 through the end of 2014 to hit our target of doubling exports. So we're ahead of our target now. Through the first half of 2011, we're up 30%. So we're on pace to match and exceed doubling exports by the end of 2014. Direct exports accounted for approximately 8% of Illinois GDP. And I would say, within the nation itself, I think Illinois is something around the 5th or 6th largest exporting state. So to say exports are important is to put it mildly. It's a big driver for economic growth. It's a big driver for Illinois jobs. And it's an area, frankly, during a tough economic time that has been a bright spot for us as it continues to grow. So what markets do we think are important? Well, Illinois exports to a whole number of markets. And as you can see on this next slide, we have a geographic spread that's quite broad. We are exporting to both NAFTA partners, Canada and Mexico ranking number 1 and 2, as well as to Asia, with China our number 3 trading partner, as well as all been relatively insulated from the downturn, and where they're growing in double-digit, they're experiencing double-digit growth in their gross national product. So places like China and Brazil are significant targets for us. Same with maybe somewhere like Chile, where they're again experiencing strong growth within their economy and are therefore a higher demand for Illinois goods and services. Let's go to the next page just to tell you a little bit more about the Office of Trade And that headquarters office consists of the deputy director. There's 6 trade specialists. We also have fiscal and administration officers. So there's about 8 to 10 staff members at any one time in the Chicago office. But at the same time, we have a whole network, a global footprint, if you will, of overseas offices. And these overseas offices serve to represent Illinois interests in that country and to that region. And the critical point here, and I think something unique about Illinois, not many states have this broad range and number of offices, is that these offices represent invaluable points of access for small and medium-sized companies. The very leaders, the Caterpillars and John Deeres. And so these offices end up being access points that are critically necessary to small and medium-sized enterprises as they try to enter foreign markets. If we go to the next page, talk a little bit about what the Office of Trade and Investment does here in Chicago. We develop and lead foreign trade missions. These are our critical anchors for how we help companies directly access the foreign market. So the idea here is you take 8 to 10 companies to a sector-specific, geographic-specific trade show and allow them to then interact with all of the connector points, let's call them agents, distributors, consumers, that make sense in order to penetrate a foreign market. We also help companies in the sort of formative stage as they try to create and craft an export and where they can make the best connections, perhaps in the quickest time. These are customized to the company. We also partner with a variety of public and private organizations to leverage the resources that we have and to connect companies to the greatest amount of input, viewpoints, perspectives, and support as possible. So you can consider us a window, a gateway to a lot of other help and resources that are out there. I could name a number of them, but I'd focus right now on the International Trade Centers, part of our small business development network, as well as a number of the trade associations, the Chambers of Commerce, the trade commissioners that are here in Chicago. We have connections and relationships with all of these organizations, and a number of them have resources that are free of service to you as a small and medium-sized enterprise as you seek to enter foreign markets. We do the things that you need to do to meet regulatory requirements, to get goods and services shipped or transported abroad. And so we're able to, again, be a point of contact, a resource node. And finally, of course, referral to other state agencies. We find particularly that companies that are interested in, let's say, agriculture, we work very closely hand in hand with our ag department to help support foreign market penetration and can continue to be a bridge for companies that are interested in that sector. Go to the next page. This just gives you a very quick rundown of who in our office is a trade specialist and their contact information and regional area of coverage. I won't belabor the point by walking through each one of these folks here that are listed, but I will say that I'm quite proud of the sort of collected expertise and in particular those sectors that make the most sense and are the most relevant to that geography. And so I highly recommend for small and medium-sized companies that are out there, for those of you that are listening in on this webinar, that if you have questions, even if they're basic, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of these trade specialists in order to get the ball rolling and start thinking through an export strategy. Or if it's about getting into a foreign market, perhaps linking up with one of our trade missions or with one of the individualized foreign market sales missions that we put together as well. If we go to the next page, here we're talking about a little bit more in depth what our foreign overseas offices provide. And before, I mentioned that they're really a unique attribute for the state in that they provide access resource constraints and size. And so here, to elaborate on that, what our foreign offices can do for you, provide in-country assistance for foreign trade missions. What we mean by this is that when a trade mission goes to a foreign country market, these offices serve as the direct liaison in setting up appointments and matchmaking, making sure that ground transportation and interpreter services are handled, figuring out the best hotel locations for the trade mission site. So again, a lot of direct on-the-ground service through these folks that are state services. Many of you may be familiar with the U.S. Department of Commerce Gold Key Service. This is exactly the same thing, but it's offered through the state of Illinois, essentially. And here what we're doing is figuring out through a number of conversations with you as a small or medium-sized company, what is the best manner for you to interact in this foreign market, who are the best people to reach out to, and what it is that you want to take out of it. What are your objectives? Meeting a distributor, getting closer to your consumers themselves directly. What is it that you actually want to take away? And the office works directly to put those meetings together. At the same time, the Foreign Office is another resource for market research and understanding about the region or the specific country that you're interested in. And of course, they do quite a bit in terms of promoting Illinois and your company gets out into specific media. So we go to the next page. This again, following the same structure, provides you with contact information about our overseas offices, who it is and where they are. And we have 9 offices, and I encourage everyone here to make use of those offices and everyone on the webinar. I think the best point of contact is still to work through directly our Chicago trade specialists, and they can then connect you out to these foreign offices after having an initial conversation with you. But at the very least, you should be aware of where these offices are, who's heading them up, and if you have the opportunity to reach out to them, you should. We move to the next page. Work that animates us. So we were talking about why are exports so important. We understand that there's an ambitious target out there, what it is that the office does and how it's structured, which we covered in terms of our trade specialists and our foreign overseas offices. Now what we want to move to is the actual program and the federal money that's been provided to the state of Illinois to directly support small and medium-sized enterprises. And this money, again, a little bit of context up front, comes through the Small Business Administration. And in specifics, the Small Business Illinois has been awarded $1.26 million in this federal funding. And just to give you a sense, the Illinois' STEP grant far outstrips some of our neighbors in Indiana or Wisconsin, which were to the tune of something like $100,000 to $200,000. Here we're talking about a much more sizable sum, and so we have the opportunity to really help Illinois-based companies. The programming that qualifies for funding under this includes a number of different vehicles to help small and medium-sized enterprises. But what we are directing their goods and the services that they're providing and get you over to that foreign market. Being able to do that, we find, is invaluable in creating the connections that actually boost export sales. And so that's our big focus. And so you'll see as I go through this that what we really want to highlight is the money that's going to be available to travel and to attend trade shows or to do gold key matchmaking services in a lot of different overseas markets. It's important to also note that there's a certain priority and special focus given to disadvantaged, rural, minority-owned, women-owned businesses, as well as those businesses that want to travel to China. And here this is coming from the federal guidelines, but what is important in terms of supporting small and
Would you say that these types of businesses would have a priority over other applicants?
I actually think that the best way to understand this is that these businesses would receive even more support in terms of financial funding as they travel abroad. The most important thing that we want to look at when we help small and medium-sized enterprises is the degree to which they have an export plan, that they meet our eligibility requirements, and that they're able and ready to travel overseas. Those are the sort of minimum requirements that we establish, and that's where we want to focus. After that, it's really a first-come, first-served basis. But if you are one of the companies that's noted here, you'll get additional funding over and above the funding given to non-disadvantaged companies. So the last point here is just to note that, of course, we're working with a whole host of partners, the Department of Commerce, what we really want to create here is a model for cross-agency, cross-state and federal collaboration in order to actually boost and have a direct impact on export sales. If we go to the next page, this now gets into the nitty-gritty. What is STEP for Illinois? STEP basically breaks down into two major categories. The first category is something I've alluded to in the past already, STEP trade missions. And here we're talking about 10 trade shows that have been pre-selected and identified. They're focused on key growth sectors and key growth regions, where we will take 8 firms per trade show, so that's a total of 80 firms for all the trade missions, and we would target 12, hopefully new to export. That is, they haven't yet exported, and so we're actually opening up exports in general for them. The idea here, though, is that the anchor activity is a trade show. Main mechanism for utilizing STEP funds if you're an Illinois small to medium-sized enterprise. The second main vehicle is to do an individual foreign market sales mission. Now here, the main activity could be a whole host of different things. And the idea is to allow us as much flexibility as possible. So if you're not one of the 80 firms that go on these 10 trade missions that have been pre-identified on specific sectors for specific regions, you don't really match those trade shows well, or you have different interests, different geographies, different sectors, we have a vehicle for you, and that's the individual foreign market sales mission. Here we customize essentially a trip overseas just for that Illinois company in order to do, again, that critical matchmaking and connection and relationship building in that foreign market to boost export growth.
So Adam, you're saying that if I wanted to go to Zimbabwe instead of Cameroon, then if I fit that criteria, you would organize a trip on my behalf?
because the trade show programming is very specific to the trade show. But if you're a company that comes and says, you know, I couldn't go on the trip to Cameroon, and I'm really interested in Zimbabwe, how can I get there and what could I do? We have a vehicle to get you there and to talk through matchmaking and programming on your behalf once you're there. Very important to note, companies can only receive assistance once in the annual period that this covers, and that's from the end of September 2011 to the end of September 2012. And they can only receive it either the individual foreign market sales mission or the step trade mission. So you get basically one single bite at the apple. So that you have, you know, as you consider your options, you should be very thoughtful about what September 2011 to September 2012 time period. To go to the next page, dig in a little bit into the details on that first vehicle. What does it mean to go on a step trade mission, one of these 10 step trade missions? So, first and foremost, we're only taking 8 companies per trade mission. That means there's only a limited space available. That's the reality of the funding constraints. But what we can say is that what we're able to offer each one of these 8 companies is fairly substantial. So qualified participants will receive the following complimentary services. All of the essential programming costs around attending the trade show will be covered. These include trade show booth fees, group ground transportation, matchmaking fees, interpreters, briefing materials, and some assistance with travel logistics. So all of the typical things that go into the costs that go into attending these trade shows would essentially be covered. Now, your own booth, as in the booth material, as well as shipping that booth material, again, the ground transportation, all of that would be covered. At the same time, and here's where we're really adding this unique feature, because we do these types of programs already, we're also able to now cover 50 to 75%, depending on whether you're a disadvantaged group or not, your travel to that show not to exceed $5,000. So let me be clear about what this means. It means that if you're traveling and the ticket costs $12,000, we can only cover 50% of the cost up to $5,000. Okay? So that means we can't cover 50% of $12,000, that's $6,000. What we can cover is $5,000. Now, I just made a very simple, basic example using an airfare. This $5,000 should include airfare as well as hotel costs. Right? So basically what we're saying is and we will cover $5,000 if it costs $12,000 to travel total. Okay? Let me take one other small detail. On trade missions, we are actually, trade missions, we're actually able to support multiple participants. We know it's important when you go to a trade show that you could have one person at the booth and one person, let's say, walking the floor. So in this case, we can support 2 people going, but that doesn't change the total $5,000 cap for the company. For $10,000, we're going to cover 50% of that cost. Okay? If we go to the next page, you get a list of here all of the trade shows that we plan to do. And again, I'm not going to read through each one of these, but the focus here is on key growth sectors and key growth regions. you'll see that each region, essentially, that we cover has one trade show. And I think, just to pick out a couple, we're focusing on green energy, high-tech innovation. We're focusing on medical devices. These are sectors that Illinois companies, in particular, Next page, here we focus now on the second vehicle. As opposed to a trade show trade mission where there's an anchor show and we're bringing 8 companies over for each show and there's a whole set company connections, but aren't necessarily going to fit with one of our trade shows. So in terms of what you get when you do this, things like Gold Key services where the Department of Commerce in that area will set up meetings for you, do partner searches, do country. Or it could include, if you have a different trade show that you wanted to attend, we'll cover the cost as much as we can, up to $1,500. So if the registration for that show costs $1,500, you can use this money towards that. Okay? So we can be flexible here. This is not an exhaustive list, but at the same time, we'll be very careful about what it is that we're focusing on in order to make sure that we get the most impact possible. At the same time, we still offer that same travel benefit, so 50 to 75%, depending on whether you're a disadvantaged company. You're able to use to travel abroad not to exceed $5,000. Now, let me be very clear. Here, we're only supporting one and again, they are able to use $5,000, up to $5,000 in cost at 50%. Just to highlight, we do focus, there are detailed guidelines that will help you walk through exactly how all of this works in terms of hotels, airfares, but just the headline on this, we're insisting on economy and standard hotel room rates. We can tell you exactly how that works out and the resources to use, but these are federal guidelines that make sure that we things that I've covered in terms of STEP. And I'll just highlight again to make sure that we're all on the same page. There's 2 major vehicles of using this STEP fund. The first one is a trade show trade mission. Take 8 companies per trade show, and we do matchmaking. We cover all of the services for the trade show, the registration fee, the booth rental costs, the ground transportation, the interpreters, all of that. And we pay 50 to 75% of travel, up to 2 people, not to exceed $5,000 total per company. The second vehicle, that's our individualized foreign market sales missions. Here we're of the limited space available in those trade shows, and here we're going to customize, we're going to build a mission for you to a foreign market that's built around your needs and where you want to be. here what you get in terms of costs for program coverage, $1,500 to spend basically to do gold keys, to do matchmaking services, potentially to register in a different trade show. It's a very flexible amount of money, and it's $1,500 cap. At the same time, you also get the 50 to 75% coverage of your hotel and airfare costs, up to one person. So that's one company, one person. Okay, we go to the next page. I want to talk a little bit about how do you qualify, right? So that's, we've gone through a very just to highlight the key eligibility criteria. Have to be in operation for at least 1 year with 500 employees or less. Here we're talking about the size requirements because this is a Small Business Administration grant. So you have to be in operation at least 1 year with 500 employees or less. You have to have a minimum of $250,000 in annual revenue for U.S. operations and basically be profitable. You have to have a demonstrated understanding of the costs associated with exporting. Here we're talking about there are companies at various stages of understanding their export strategy. And by no means do we want to exclude those companies that are just starting out and that may not have as much expertise or knowledge about what it takes to export. We certainly will work with every company, and the international trade centers are incredibly well positioned to help the very new to export companies develop and craft an export strategy with a lot of to sign up new distributors, etc. We want those companies to be ready and committed to exporting, and so one of our threshold requirements is that these companies understand how and what it takes to export.
Could you go through a little bit of the 3 steps? Because let's say I'm under 500 employees.
Sure.
But I think that I know I've got the stuff to, if I get that order in, that I'm going to be able to produce. How would how would one go about getting the same type of assistance that you may not qualify for this exact program?
Right. So the first point of contact, if you are a small company that's, you think you've got a unique product that would sell well overseas, maybe you're seeing even interest on your website I think the first point of entry is your international trade center. There are 11 international trade centers. They're part of the Small Business Development Network throughout the state. And these international trade centers, they're, again, geographically diverse. They cover the entire state. Are your first point of entry because what they do is they help you think through what is an export strategy. And the components of that are understanding your product, understanding the regulatory environment in which your product would exist in these different markets, understanding the market forces that are prevalent in these different countries, who's already there, as in what competitors, what other markets are there, what would the pricing strategy be. So all of the things that go into deciding whether a market is a good market to get into in terms of exports, all of those things should be sorted out and thought through. And these are the International Trade Center business models that you can use, templates that you can use, regulatory, again, free regulatory resources that you can use, and that allows you to then craft your strategy. Once you have a good strategy in place, then you're ready to start making efforts to actually get your goods overseas, and that's where we would come in. That's where work with the Exim Bank would come in terms of financing support, and that's when you can really start to engage and act on the execution-oriented resources that are out there. So I think that's the right path and framework to think it through. Products and services, again, an additional eligibility requirement. Products and or services for export have to contain at least 51% USA content and should contain 20 Finally, the OTI and the International Trade Center, working hand in hand, should decide that this company has a sound strategy and is ready to export. And so I think, these are the eligibility requirements, and quite frankly, it's a very large net. Don't self-exclude. I think you'll probably find that this includes almost most companies out there, and that if you're even considering it, you should throw your hat in the ring. So we go to the next page. Can give you a sense of how does the process work? What happens next? Okay, great presentation. Now how do I get involved? Let's start with candidate application. So as I've said this whole time, first point of entry is the Illinois Small Business Development Center International Trade Center. And they have a form that's called a Illinois.gov. And once you download that form or you fill it out online, you send it to your nearest international trade center. And you are able to find that on our website at exports.illinois.gov. And once you've sent that form in, that starts your application process. The Small Business Development Center, International Trade Center will then work with us to highlight interest in STEP, and will think through with the company, that's you, what are your objectives, how ready and willing you are to export, what markets you're interested in, all of the sort of initial questions that need to be asked. And then they will refer you, as the company, to the Office of Trade and Investment in order to do a joint evaluation where the Office of Trade and Investment and walk hand in hand through the process of what would a STEP trade mission or individual foreign market sales mission really look like for you. And then finally, we'll identify the best fit in terms of the vehicles I mentioned, STEP funding vehicles that are out there for that company. So once you do that second stage of candidate review, you move to the third stage of candidate selection. Here, the Illinois firm would sign